friends. Over the last couple of weeks, we've broken down every single inversion of major and minor chords up and down the fingerboard. And this week I want to talk about the two final types of triadic chords, or three-note groupings, which are diminished and augmented. Now, it's important that you understand major and minor before this, because these are both just really expanding on the idea of major and minor. So let's hop right in and start with our diminished chords. So with our diminished chords, this is based off of our minor chord shape. We spoke last week about how when we have a major chord, we can make it minor by just taking the third or the second note in the chord and bringing it down 1/2 step or 1 fret. Now we can take this concept even further by making a diminished chord. And what does that mean? That means that we're now going to have two intervals of a minor third. So we'll still have that first minor interval that we had in our minor chord, but in addition to that, we're going to take the fifth and also bring that down 1/2 step or 1 fret as well. So we can think of this in the key of C major. C major, we would have C, E, and G. Now to make this minor, we would bring the E, or the third, down 1/2 step. We have C, E flat, G. It's our C minor chord. And we'd make this even further by just taking our fifth, or the third note in the chord, in this case a G, and bringing it down 1/2 step and making it a G flat, or 1 fret down. So we would now have C, E flat, G flat. So our diminished chord, you'll note, does not sound very pretty, and that's exactly how it should sound. So let's talk about our different inversions of this now. As we've talked about in the last few weeks, you can take any of these chords and start it as the root, the third, or the fifth in any type of order, and those are what's called inversions. And they can get us up and down the neck. So if we think of just our root position voicing, and heck, let's use E major for this since everyone hates it. So our root position voice would be 4, 4, 4, 2. Right? To make that minor, we would bring the third down, or our E string, so we'd have 4, 4, 3, 2. There's an E minor chord. Now we need to bring the fifth down, but the rub is the fifth is on both of our outer strings. They both need to come down 1 fret, which doesn't make fingering this easy. So we would bring them each down by 1 fret, making it 3, 4, 3, 1. We can play it like this, but this is not very common just because the stretch is rather large, especially if you're playing, say, a tenor uke, or you have smaller hands. So what we would generally do is omit the A string and just mute this and play 3, 4, 3. Think of it as a G major shape, just moved up 1 string, really. That's our root position diminished chord. And then if we wanted to make this now our first inversion diminished chord, let's do this off of, say, a C major chord. So we'll do our first inversion C major chord, 5, 4, 3, 3. Right? We bring the third down, 5, 3, 3, 3. Now there's our C minor chord. And now to make this diminished, we need to bring the G, which is on the third fret of our E string, down 1/2 step down to the second fret. So that would give us 5, 3, 2, 3. Now, even on my soprano, this is a hard voicing. So likewise, we would just omit the G string on this voicing. It looks just like a G7th chord shape when we leave the G out. And this is our first inversion diminished chord. Now, to get to our second inversion diminished chord, this is when things get a little bit funky. So we can start out on a G. Here's G in second inversion. We have 4, 2, 3, 2. Now we need to bring our outer strings down to make our minor, so that makes it 3, 2, 3, 1. There's our G minor chord. And now we have to bring down the D, which is on the second fret of our C string, down 1/2 step to a D flat. So we would now have 3, 1, 3, 1. Now again, not a very common voicing. This bar is a little tough. I would generally omit the G string on this and play it as 1, 3, 1. You still get all of the notes. We're just doubling a note on the G string. And those are all 3 different iterations of your diminished chords. Now, you've probably heard that diminished chords can be moved up and down the neck and repeat themselves all over, and that is true, but for diminished 7th chords. We are talking about triads here, which are the basis for those. So you will need these 3 inversions when you are playing standard diminished chords. We will dive into 7th chords in a couple weeks and talk more about those movable voicings and how they repeat themselves up and down the neck. So now we get to our final type of triadic chord, our augmented chord. And this is based off of our major chord. It has a major interval between the first two notes and then a second major interval between the second, which gives us our augmented fifth. And that means that instead of taking the fifth and modifying it down a half step like we did with a diminished chord, we're now going to raise it up one half step. Let me demonstrate. So if we're in C, our C major chord would be C, E, and G, right? So we want to take the fifth, or our G, and move it up one half step or one fret. So we would have C, E, G sharp. That's a very foreboding sound, and that's our augmented chord. But the cool thing about augmented chords is as we go up the inversions, we realize that they are just new augmented chords. So we only need one shape to do each of these. If we think about this, we just had C, E, and G sharp. Now if we go up to the third, so we start on our E, we'll have stacked major intervals. So we'll have E, we have our G sharp again, and then we have our C, but in this context it would really be a B sharp, which is an enharmonic equivalent of the same note by a different name. And we would build our chord like this. This is an E augmented chord, or you could call it a C augmented chord in second inversion, but it's really the same exact grouping of notes. And likewise, as we go up to the G sharp and stack major thirds on top of it would be G sharp, B sharp, and then D double sharp, bringing us to what effectively is an E. So you only need one augmented shape, and any note in the chord we can call the root at any given time. It would only change depending on the functionality and context of the song, but you only need one chord shape. So we'll build it around our fifth fret, so we'll call this our E augmented chord, or a C second inversion augmented chord. It would be 5, 4, 4, 3. That is your augmented chord shape that you can move up and down the fingerboard and play any augmented chord that you want with just one chord shape. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this little series on triads, and soon we're going to start breaking down seventh chords, but it's really important for you to understand the foundation of triads before we start adding these color tones or extensions to them. I'll see y'all next week.